Sons of the Desert, we are all familiar with the business of this special meeting. This oasis must meet the situation with determination. I repeat, this oasis must face the situation with determination. Every man must be accounted for. Every man must do his part. There must be no weaklings in our midst. We must put our very hearts and souls into this great undertaking. There must be no thought of failure. We must stand shoulder to shoulder. We must work. We must sacrifice. The weak must be helped by the strong. For gentlemen, this, the oldest lodge in the great order of the Sons of the Desert, must be represented 100%. We will now take the oath. And remember, once taken, this oath has never been broken by any man. Down through the centuries of time in the history of this fraternal organization. If any member is doubtful of his strength to keep this solemn pledge, he will please be seated. Place yourselves in position to receive the oath. Do you all solemnly swear to be present at our 87th annual convention at Chicago?
I do.
Me too.
Wholeheartedly unanimous.
Why didn't you want to take the oath?
I was afraid.
Afraid of what?
One of the rituals that was used in some of the lodges prior to 1717 and shortly after, in fact, was the ritual of the blood initiation rite. This was where the little finger was cut and blood was shed, and this was the new member doing that, making a blood covenant with the organization. Today we find that when the new member joins the organization, he kneels, he's blindfolded, he's bare-breasted, and the master of the lodge touches his left breast with a sharply pointed sword.
Here's the oath that Masons have to swear. This is one of the first oaths. They have all sorts of them at every level. The Mason, to get in the lodge, will say, I, he puts his name in here, do hereby swear that I will always conceal and never reveal any of the secrets of Freemasonry to any person. If I do, I consent to having my throat cut from ear to ear, my tongue torn out by the roots, my body buried in the sands of the sea at low water mark.
Masonry is identical to the ancient mysteries, which means that all their teachings in all their books are precisely the same as the ancient pagan satanic mysteries.
Over the centuries, man has evolved a variety of religious beliefs and traditions. Some of these, such as Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, are monotheistic. That is, they're based on the concept of one supreme deity. Others, such as Hinduism, are polytheistic, believing in many gods and goddesses. But one of the oldest religions is also the most universal, emerging virtually unchanged in geographically separated and radically diverse cultures. This is the religion of paganism, the worship of the moon goddess and the sun god, whether they're called Isis and Osiris, Apollo and Diana, Cernunnos and Aradia, or a host of other names. Paganism is the same mystical religion that first emerged in ancient Babylon thousands of years ago. But what has paganism got to do with Freemasonry?
The ritual and theology of Freemasonry really originates from Egyptian paganism. And the reason for this is that, as we find, in 1717, the rituals and theology were formalized and brought together and formed the Grand Lodge in England. The reason being that there were a great many lodges throughout England and throughout Europe at that time. They all had slightly different practices. These practices had originated from the origins of the speculative Masons, which of course was Rosicrucianism. The Rosicrucians believed in the Hermetic and Egyptian traditions, and as we find within Freemasonry, we find Osiris, Adonis, and Isis mentioned quite frequently. So of course these are the Egyptian pagan symbols, pagan gods.
Here is the General Albert Pike, who was during his time 100 years ago, was the world leader of the Masonic Lodge. He said, "That which we must say to the crowd is, we worship a God, but it is the God that won the doors without superstition. To you, sovereign grand inspectors general, we say this, that you may repeat it to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, and 30th degrees. The Masonic religion should be, by all of us initiates of the highest degrees, maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. Yes, Lucifer is God." Very few Masons understand what they're in until they get to the very top, and then all of a sudden they realize, wow, this is a satanic organization.
Thelema, Theosophy, Satanism, Luciferians and the occult, the Freemasons, this is all tied together. And what is the common connection of it all? It is the worship of Satan.
In the Blue Degrees, an initiate is initiated into the Egyptian trinity of the ancient mysteries of Egypt. And this Egyptian trinity is hidden from the initiate. He does not know at all what he is being initiated into. It's not even mentioned.
Manly Hall, in his book called The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, said, "When the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly handle energy."
Now, most men will go into the Scottish Rite and progress on through 32 degrees, and in each one of those degrees, they give worship to different gods and deities, Egyptian gods, Persian gods, Greek gods, and they go through a series of rituals. Now, much of this is covered up by symbols and allegories, so that Masons, as they go through it, don't fully understand what they're doing.
The true name of Satan, the Kabbalists say, is Yahweh. It's God reversed. For Satan is not a black god, but a negation of God. The Kabbalah imagines him to be a most occult light. Freemasonry, I can tell you, has been proved beyond the shadow of a doubt to be satanic to the core.
They will try to get religious people in there and make them a Mason, and they come to the meetings and they think, wow, this is a do-gooders club, you know, et cetera, and they never do find out what they're in. They spend a lifetime thinking, you know, everything's fine.
Freemasonry goes so far as to actually call Lucifer God. In the words of Sovereign Pontiff of Universal Freemasonry, Albert Pike, yes, Lucifer is God, and unfortunately, Adonai, the Hebrew God of the Bible, is also God. And the true and pure philosophical religion is the belief in Lucifer, the equal of Adonai. But Lucifer, God of light and God of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the God of darkness and evil.
Remember Pike's words that Masonry is identical to the ancient mysteries. This statement means that the Freemasons believe the ancient mysteries and worship the same God, Satan, albeit under different names.
When Masons say that Jesus Christ is simply another great moral teacher, another great moral prophet, equal with Buddha. In fact, Masons teach, according to Albert Pike, that Buddha was the first great Masonic teacher. So they're equating Jesus with Buddha, with Muhammad, with the religious leaders, as just another religious leader. He is not God. He is not the incarnate Savior who came to save men from their sins, because Masons do not need a Savior. Masons feel they can save themselves through moral good deeds.
Of the literally millions of Masons worldwide, how many of them are actually aware of the true meaning of the Masonic symbols? The answer is very few. Since most Masons never go past the 3rd degree of the Blue Lodge, the rank of Master Mason, the vast majority of them never discover what they're involved in. And they never will discover what Freemasonry is all about unless they venture into the higher levels of the Scottish Rite or the York Rite. In fact, they're not just ignorant, they're deliberately misled by their superiors in the lodge. In the words of Masonry's own authority, Albert Pike, the blue degrees are but the outer court or portico of the temple. Part of the symbols are displayed there to the initiate, but he is intentionally misled by false interpretations It is not intended that he shall understand them, but it is intended that he shall imagine that he understands them.
And many Masons go through the first 3 degrees, become a Master Mason, and they just quit there, thinking that this is just a nice fraternal organization. And they do not realize that their own leaders have consciously lied and deceived to them because they do not want them to know the true teachings of Masonry.
That Masonry is the craft, the old name for witchcraft, that all Satanists are assured that if they will join the coven and learn the craft, then they'll control the supernatural power of Satan. It's conclusively proven that Freemasonry is actually a worship of Lucifer, the light bearer. Of course, since Lucifer and Satan are biblically the same person, Freemasonry is the worship of Satan.
They're going to find out they're working for Satan after it's too late.
It's important to understand that it will be the Kabbalist system that gives rise to the Antichrist. The Kabbalah is Satan's gospel. And you know what? The Old Testament prophets were diametrically opposed to this, and they talked about this. Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, they thundered against the evil, devilish, Antichrist Kabbalah.
One of the things that I learned from whistleblowers from the Cabal itself is that they have to work within something they call the rules. And this is very, very important. The rules are a body of spiritual principles that they must follow in order to be allowed to exist. Now, what do I mean by allowed to exist? I mean that they are aware that there are benevolent forces that will prevent them from achieving their goals unless we give them permission to enslave us. Now think about that. Well, I didn't give them permission. So why did they put this plan for 3 world wars on display in a book that's hanging there open behind glass in the British Museum Library of London? And those 3 world wars that they're outlining are exactly World War I, World War II, and the War on Terrorism. Because the rules state that they have to tell us what they're doing. Therefore, if we allow it to happen, we have consented to tyranny, we have consented to enslavement. Now, if you get into the secret history of the Cabal, this was rediscovered by Queen Elizabeth, the original Elizabeth that we've heard about from the 1500s. Queen Elizabeth's royal astrologer, a man named John Dee, who is the prototype of the wizard with the long beard, the hat, and what he did was to rediscover, through these ancient documents that were in the Vatican, the technology of how to access what they considered to be spiritual beings that were useful to them, but what we would consider to be demonic or evil beings. These beings need to be accessed through a very complex set of rituals and ceremonies. You cannot just ask for them to show up. You have to follow very elaborate and specific protocols. If you follow those protocols, it's like having an IP address, which is what we use to go online in order to notate a website. Every website has its own IP address. These spiritual beings, such as Baal and Moloch, which they still do ceremonies for today, such as in Bohemian Grove, there is a giant effigy, stone effigy of an owl. That's the god Moloch. The god Moloch goes all the way back to Rome and Carthage, in which they were offering child sacrifices to this god in exchange for power.
John Dee would risk his life to study its teachings.
John Dee was a giant. John Dee was the embodiment of the ideal of an enlightened being who had the spiritual understanding of his role and mission in life, and who was gifted with, superior intelligence.
But like Pythagoras, he would pay a heavy price for daring to seek out the wisdom of the gods. The ultimate Renaissance man, Dee followed in the footsteps of Paracelsus, using experimentation to become a gifted scientist, an inventor, a mathematician, a brilliant cryptographer, and a pioneer in the field of navigation.
But he was also an occultist, he was a sorcerer, he was an astrologer. He was, in fact, Queen Elizabeth's personal court astrologer. And in that sense, his interests were all very much in keeping with the thinking of the time. There wasn't a distinction made between magic and science, and he was pursuing an understanding of the world. around him.
When Queen Elizabeth rose to the throne of England in 1558, she installed Dee as court astrologer, but his influence reached far beyond his position. England's famous magician was also a spy for the Queen.
He was involved with political intrigue. He was a trusted ally of the Queen, but he was also working behind the scenes throughout Europe to help to lower the power of the Church and to substitute Protestant power in its stead.
With Dee's guidance, Queen Elizabeth officially legitimized the most significant occult science of the Renaissance, alchemy. Alchemists had two goals: to heal illness and to turn base metal into gold. They believed success could be achieved by finding the Philosopher's Stone, a mystical agent that would also produce a higher level of consciousness in the alchemist.
That was really an approach to trying to understand the way the physical world works, and alchemy as a practice, was the forefather of modern chemistry.
Alchemy had existed since the early Egyptians, but in the hands of the Renaissance scientists, it reached new heights.
Everything that we know and do today in our modern science was developed by the alchemists. Laboratory techniques were part of the alchemical tradition. The observation of results, the scientific method is a child of alchemy.
Alchemists were on the leading edge of science. They discovered phosphorus, zinc, the distillation of alcohol, the germ nature of diseases. They were the first to understand how blood circulates in the body. The Church viewed their unorthodox experiments and scientific breakthroughs with growing suspicion.
We are speeding up what nature does. We're speeding up the rate at which the metals evolve. We're speeding up the rate at which medicines are combined and raise consciousness. And the Church felt that you can't be speeding up God's creation without recourse to demons.
Despite his work in alchemy, Dee's true occult passion lay in divination. He believed that he could apply scientific methods to communicate with supernatural beings. Dee's obsession with contacting the angels would have disastrous consequences. This art of manipulating objects like bones, tea leaves, and tarot cards had arrived from the Muslim East in the 14th century and become a popular method of fortune-telling. But Dee used a divination method known as scrying. Dee relied on looking into a crystal ball that would reflect back supernatural information.
Scrying is a long-time-old technique, scrying into glasses, mirrors, bodies of water, anything that would have a reflective surface, and see if you could see not just the material things, but the spiritual things standing behind.
These efforts were unsuccessful until one day a young man named Edward Kelly appeared at his door. Kelly seemed to have the talent to see into the shadow world.
Their system involved Edward Kelly looking into a amethyst crystal and describing what he saw, and John Dee would then record these communications.
Kelly began receiving messages from the angels. They spoke in a language he called Enochian, from the lost biblical book of Enoch. These transmissions are early examples of what New Age followers now call channeling.
What Dee and Kelly brought forth was completely new. It was not based on tradition.
He appeared to be speaking a new language.
The Enochian language does appear to have a coherent vocabulary and syntax, and this doesn't seem like the sort of thing that Kelly, who was not a particularly educated or schooled person, could have just invented. He couldn't have faked something like that.
John Dee and Kelly embarked on a tour of Europe to share their discoveries, just as the Inquisition launched another crackdown against heretics.
All you needed was a slight change in political or religious circumstance, and something that was considered exceptionally wonderful would then be considered demonic and scary.
Dee returned home to England to find that a mob had destroyed his irreplaceable library and scientific and occult instruments. Dee had fallen out of favor with the court. The man who began as a leading scientist of the Renaissance ended his life penniless, branded as a sorcerer.
Dee's main legacy was not to science, it is to magic. And it's because of those who have come after, who have seized upon what he created and made it into a new worldview, whether it's consciousness arts or ceremonial magic or divination, could take place inside these new parameters that they set up.
John Dee's fall was the beginning of the occult's end. The practices were reviled by the church as the work of demonic possession. From the 14th through the 16th century, more than 40,000 people would be executed for witchcraft. Occult ideas became embedded in the traditions of secret societies, such as the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians.
So John Dee rediscovered the technology of how to draw the magic circles, how to say the right incantations, how to actually do black magic on a governmental level. This is what people are going to have so much trouble with once disclosure happens, is that these people actually practice black magic, and they are very, very good at it.
Some of the parallels between Freemasonry and witchcraft show such a similarity that it cannot possibly be coincidental. Similarities in ritual, wording, and symbolism are so close in several instances that it clearly suggests a common origin. To examine this possibility, I spoke with a number of former Masons and compared their Blue Lodge initiations with the experiences of former occultists.
In the initiation in Freemasonry, we had to be recommended by another Mason. Well, in order to join witchcraft, you have to be first screened. You have to be recommended by somebody currently in witchcraft.
Well, when I was initiated, I was blindfolded and bound by a rope, and on your bare chest was thrust the point of a spear.
In witchcraft, we were initiated through a very involved ritual, initiation ceremony, wherein the candidate was led blindfolded, bound by a rope to the edge of the magic circle.
And the rope is around your neck and your lid forward. And up front, in the eastern end of the building, is a person who's a worshipful master. And you kneel down before him as if he were a god.
You were met by the high priest or high priestess at that time, usually with a sword to your chest.
When I went to enter the lodge, a sharp object was put to my left breast. And I was warned that should I reveal any of the secrets of Freemasonry, to know what to expect.
When you're presented before the high priest, a sword is held against your chest, and you actually take a blood oath, promising to remain faithful to the secrets of witchcraft.
Well, when you are in the room, this blindfold is taken away from you, and this is a time when they say that you're coming from darkness into light.
During the initiation ceremony, the initiate is led by the lieutenant of the high priest and is challenged at the edge of the circle by someone saying, "Who goes there?" And the answer is, "One from the world of darkness."
In Masonry, the prayers are ended with "So mote it be."
Oh, and one of the other aspects of, or distinctives of the craft was that we would always end any spell or ritual where we released the power, this is where the power was released, with the word "So mote it be."
One of the things that came out in email leaks was an email from August 29, 2008. A senior government staffer writes to Hillary Clinton, "With fingers crossed, the old rabbit's foot, out of the box in the attic, I will be sacrificing a chicken in the backyard to Moloch." Thanks to WikiLeaks, Hillary Clinton's email archive containing 30,000 plus emails, free to search, by the way, we now have more concrete proof that Hillary Clinton and other globalist elites have occultic ties. In fact, it's said that Hillary Clinton herself is a high-level witch who's frequented covens in California for the past 2 decades. Come on, guys, nobody randomly uses Moloch in a conversation. Most people don't even know what Moloch is. But Bohemian Grove and that cast of characters, that ilk, that miscreant that flies out to a 2,700-acre campground deep in Montreal, California, a property which, by the way, belongs to private San Francisco-based men's art club known as the Bohemian Grove. What does it do in mid-July of each year? Yeah, it's coming up. It hosts a 2-week occult confab consisting of some of the most prominent men in the world. And what do? Well, they gather around Moloch in a ritualistic sacrifice that is straight out of the pit of hell. And for those that say it's just an eccentric party, oh yeah, it's a mishmash of hookers and homosexuals, young male prostitutes who are often underage, which ties back in to the obsession these weirdos have for young boys. As far as I'm concerned, it is Camp Pedogate, and this goes on every July just north of San Francisco, basically the gay capital of America. Isn't that lovely? So what is Moloch, the biblical Canaanite god associated with child sacrifice? What is this deity that's referred to in Jeremiah 32:35? And also they built the high places of Baal. Demon gods, Baal and Moloch? What does that have to do with anything?
Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Illuminati, said, "The most wonderful thing of all is that the distinguished Lutheran and Calvinist theologians who belong to our order really believe that they see in it," that's the Illuminati, "the true and genuine sense of Christian religion. O mortal man, is there anything you cannot be made to believe?" It was all a hoax.
It's high-level black magic, occult witchcraft is what it is, that goes right into Thelema, Aleister Crowley, Theosophy, Helena Blavatsky, and it was Walt Disney that had a very close acquaintance, ongoing acquaintance with Anton LaVey, the author of the Satanic Bible and the leader of the Church of Satan. And likewise, Anton LaVey considered Walt Disney to be a very high-level satanic guide. Anton LaVey was the one that revealed that Walt Disney and Petrovich Mussorgsky, the Russian composer who wrote the orchestral tone, the poem Night on Bald Mountain, it was featured in Disney's Fantasia by the same name, a very satanic theme. And again, it wasn't just Fantasia. He often placed satanic themes, occult images in all of his movies. Not just satanic themes, but sexual, satanic, and hidden occult symbolism and imagery. That was his trademark signature. The 666, the number of the beast of Revelation 13, is all throughout his logo. Big fan of Aleister Crowley, who self-identified with that same name, by the way, by calling himself the Megatherion, the great beast. So it's not bad enough that you have this whole cornucopia of witches, wizards, Wiccans, Chaldeans, Baal worshippers, Moloch lovers.
I know you think you're in a do-gooders club. I've got some very close friends, some relatives that are in the Masonic Lodge that have been in it for years and don't see a thing wrong with it. They will. Judgment Day.
You know, they wear the square and compass, and in the center is a G. You see it on the Masonic Lodges where they have the square and compass with the G. Some Masons will tell you it means the geometric, the geometry of the universe, or it means God. Actually, their own books say it's the generating principle of life, that the compass or the square represents the female, and the compass coming down upon her represents the male that impregnates the female. And this generating principle, the male organ, is what brings immortality in life. You see, when they talk about immortality, they are talking about recreating life through the sexual act. And this is what they are covering with the white lambskin apron. This is why a woman can never be a Mason. She does not have the generating principle of life, which they proudly wear on their lapel as the square and compass and the G.
And this eye is the Eye of Horus. Masonic and Illuminati imagery, indeed that which is taken. And this goes right back to the occult symbols that are so popular in the movie and music industry.
Check this out. See this? The pyramid in the eye, do you know what that signifies?
Illuminati.
What does the writing say?
He favors our undertaking.
Yes, I do. And this?
The Order of the Ages.
Novus Ordo. Yeah. You know, the best place to keep a secret is right in front of someone.